I never thought I would find myself sitting in divorce court watching my ex-wife Jessica and her wealthy boyfriend Trevor smirking and whispering jokes at my expense. After 8 years of marriage, she left me for a man with deeper pockets, claiming she deserved more than my honest contractor salary could provide. They took almost everything in the settlement negotiations, leaving me barely hanging on to my business and dignity. But that final day in court, everything changed when the judge revealed one last surprise that wiped those smug smiles off their faces forever. Before I tell you how the judge wiped those smug smiles off their faces, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you believe karma eventually finds its way back to those who deserve it. I met Jessica 8 years ago at a backyard barbecue hosted by my buddy Mark. She stood out immediately not just because of her striking beauty with those captivating blue eyes and auburn hair, but because of how genuinely interested she seemed in my work as a construction contractor. While other women I had dated seemed underwhelmed by my blue-collar profession, Jessica asked thoughtful questions about my projects and seemed to admire my work ethic. "I think what you do is amazing," she said that night, as we sat on the porch steps away from the noise of the party. "You actually build things that last, that matter. There is something so honest about that." Our romance moved quickly after that first meeting. Jessica was spontaneous, affectionate, and made me feel valued in a way no one ever had before. Within 6 months, I proposed with a modest diamond ring that represented 3 months of careful saving. When she tearfully said yes, I thought I had found my forever partner, someone who appreciated the simple but meaningful life I could provide. We started our marriage in a small fixer-upper on the edge of town. It needed significant work, but I saw potential in its solid foundation and character. Each weekend I would tackle another renovation project, transforming our starter home room by room, while Jessica planned the decor and cheered me on. Those early days felt perfect, with simple dinners on our back patio and dreams shared under starlit skies. My construction business was growing steadily, and I worked tirelessly to build our future. Most days I left before sunrise and returned after sunset, often putting in 60-plus-hour weeks to establish a solid reputation in our community. Jessica initially supported my ambition, preparing packed lunches with encouraging notes and understanding when I missed social events due to work emergencies. The first subtle shift in our marriage coincided with my business finally turning a significant profit after years of reinvestment. Jessica began talking about upgrading our lifestyle, browsing real estate listings in more prestigious neighborhoods, and making comments about the limitations of our renovated home. "Elijah, we deserve to live somewhere that reflects your success," she would say. "You have worked so hard, why not enjoy the fruits of your labor?" Wanting to make her happy and admittedly a bit proud of my accomplishments, I agreed to look at homes in Oak Ridge, an upscale neighborhood that would stretch our finances but might be manageable with my increasing income. The mortgage on the 2-story colonial we eventually purchased was nearly triple our previous payment, but Jessica's joy seemed worth the financial pressure. With the move to Oak Ridge came a new social circle for Jessica. Suddenly, our weekends were filled with neighborhood association events, charity fundraisers, and dinner parties, with people who drove luxury cars and took exotic vacations. Jessica thrived in this environment while I often felt out of place, conscious of my calloused hands and practical conversation topics among doctors, attorneys, and executives. "Try to mingle more," Jessica would whisper when I retreated to a quiet corner at these gatherings. "These connections could be good for your business." She was right about the business opportunities, but something about these new relationships felt transactional rather than genuine. Still, I wanted to support Jessica's social aspirations, so I bought nicer clothes, learned about wine, and tried to fit into this world that felt increasingly foreign. As my business demanded more attention and the financial pressure mounted, Jessica and I began spending less quality time together. She joined several committees and clubs, filling her days with activities that kept her within the Oak Ridge social orbit. Increasingly, she was glued to her phone, smiling at private messages and stepping away for calls that she would vaguely describe as just friend stuff if I inquired. The warning signs were there, but I was too busy keeping our financial ship afloat to recognize them. Jessica started making excuses to be away overnight, citing girls' trips and charity events in neighboring cities. Her affection toward me cooled noticeably, with intimacy becoming increasingly rare and perfunctory. The truth revealed itself on a Thursday afternoon when I decided to surprise Jessica for her 35th birthday. I had arranged for a subcontractor to handle the day's work, purchased a bouquet of her favorite peonies, and picked up a gold bracelet she had admired weeks earlier. Arriving home unexpectedly at 3 in the afternoon, I noticed an unfamiliar luxury SUV in our driveway, but naively assumed it belonged to one of her Oak Ridge friends. The bedroom door was partially open, and the sounds emanating from it instantly shattered my world. Standing frozen in the hallway, I heard Jessica laughing, in a way she had not laughed with me in years, followed by a male voice I did not recognize. When I finally forced myself to push the door open, I found my wife entangled with a silver-haired man who looked about 15 years our senior, wearing an expensive watch that probably cost more than my truck. Jessica gasped, making a half-hearted attempt to cover herself. "You are supposed to be at work until 7. The man, who I would later learn was Trevor Blackwood, a prominent real estate developer, had the audacity to extend his hand, as though we were meeting at a business function rather than in the aftermath of his affair with my wife. "I have been unhappy for a long time," Jessica said coldly, once Trevor had dressed and awkwardly excused himself to wait downstairs. "You are always working, always covered in dirt, and worrying about money. Trevor can give me the life I deserve without all the struggle." By evening, she had packed several suitcases and moved into Trevor's lakeside mansion, leaving me alone in the oversized house with its oversized mortgage and the shattered remnants of what I had thought was a solid marriage. The divorce process was nothing short of brutal. Jessica hired Diane Winters, notoriously the most aggressive divorce attorney in the city, whose retainer alone was more than I cleared in a month. Trevor was bankrolling Jessica's entire legal strategy, a fact her lawyer did not even try to hide during our initial mediation session. "My client is entitled to half of the assets acquired during marriage, including Mr. Sullivan's business, which grew significantly during their union," Diane stated clinically, as Jessica sat beside her in designer clothes I had never seen before. "Additionally, given the lifestyle to which she has become accustomed, we are seeking substantial spousal support." My own attorney, Peter Garrison, was competent but outmatched. I could only afford him on a limited basis, stretching payments over months, while still trying to maintain my business operations. He warned me early on that we were fighting an uphill battle. "They are playing hardball," Peter told me after our third unsuccessful mediation. "Jessica is claiming she contributed significantly to your business growth through social networking and client introductions. Without a prenuptial agreement, the court might find merit in that argument." What made the situation even more difficult was the campaign of reputation destruction that Trevor launched against me in the business community. As a prominent developer, he had connections with many potential clients and suppliers. Suddenly, contracts that had been verbally confirmed fell through. Supply orders were delayed or canceled. A whisper campaign suggested my company was in financial trouble and that I had anger management issues that made me difficult to work with. During a deposition, Jessica tearfully described incidents where I had frightened her with my temper, carefully exaggerating normal marital disagreements into something that sounded vaguely threatening. The fact that I had never once raised a hand to her, or even raised my voice significantly, was conveniently overlooked. Trevor sat behind her during this performance, his hand protectively on her shoulder, playing the role of savior. As the legal process dragged on, I discovered that Jessica had been methodically transferring funds from our joint accounts to private ones for months before leaving. Small amounts, never enough to trigger my attention, had steadily flowed out of our shared financial resources into accounts I had no access to. When confronted through our attorneys, she claimed these were for personal safety because she feared my reaction if she asked for a divorce. The financial and emotional strain began taking a serious toll. I lost 15 pounds, developed insomnia, and found myself sitting in my truck outside job sites some mornings, unable to summon the energy to begin the day. The house was heading toward foreclosure, my business was faltering, and several friends had distanced themselves, unsure what to believe about the rumors circulating. During this darkest period, an unexpected source of support emerged. Eduardo Rodriguez, a 72-year-old client who had hired me to renovate his modest retirement home, noticed my distraction and weight loss during a project meeting. Instead of complaining about delays, he invited me to stay for dinner, listening patiently as I reluctantly shared my situation over his homemade paella. "You know, son," he said, in his gentle, accented English, "sometimes God allows us to lose what we thought we wanted, so we can receive what we truly need." Mr. Rodriguez became a mentor and friend, offering wisdom from his own experiences and providing practical help by connecting me with his niece Maria, who worked as a paralegal at a respected law firm. Though not directly involved in my case, Maria offered invaluable insights into the divorce proceedings and noticed inconsistencies in Jessica's financial declarations that our overworked attorney had missed. The timeline does not add up, Maria pointed out one evening as we reviewed documents at her uncle's dining table. These account transfers began increasing 14 months ago, but accelerated significantly 8 months before your separation. And look at these text message records your attorney subpoenaed. There are dozens of exchanges with Trevor's number going back over a year before she left. This revelation gave me renewed determination to fight. I made the difficult decision to sell my specialized construction equipment and my truck, downgrading to older models that allowed me to continue working while freeing up cash to hire a forensic accountant. It was a gamble that would either save my business or complete its destruction. The accountant, a meticulous woman named Veronica Park, uncovered evidence that Trevor had been financially advising Jessica for over a year before our separation, including emails where they discussed the optimal timing for leaving me based on projected business revenue and contract completions. Most damning were records showing Trevor had referred Jessica to his own financial advisor 16 months before she moved out, with notes specifically mentioning divorce preparation strategies. Meanwhile, Jessica and Trevor flaunted their relationship publicly, appearing at community events together and posting lavish vacation photos on social media platforms where they knew mutual friends would see them. They made no attempt to be discreet about moving on before the divorce was even finalized, seemingly confident in their legal position and financial advantage. As the final court date approached, Peter warned me to temper my expectations despite our new evidence. The judge assigned to your case, Judge Simmons, is fair but strictly by the book. Even with proof of some financial maneuvering, California is a community property state. Prepare yourself for significant losses. I entered that final phase of proceedings exhausted, but resolved to maintain my dignity regardless of the outcome. After everything Jessica and Trevor had taken, my self-respect was something I refused to surrender. The county courthouse was an imposing structure of marble and gravity, its high ceilings and wooden benches designed to remind everyone of the serious nature of legal proceedings. I arrived 30 minutes early for our 9 a.m., hearing dressed in my only suit, which now hung loosely on my frame due to my unintentional weight loss. Jessica and Trevor arrived 5 minutes before proceedings began, making an entrance that drew all eyes in their direction. She wore a cream-colored designer dress that probably cost more than all the clothes in my closet, combined her hair and makeup, professionally done. Trevor accompanied her in a tailored navy suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, Italian leather shoes gleaming under the fluorescent lights. They took seats directly across the aisle from me, close enough that I could smell Jessica's familiar perfume, now mixed with the scent of Trevor's expensive cologne. "You look terrible," Jessica whispered across the aisle, her tone a mixture of satisfaction and practiced concern. "You should take better care of yourself." Trevor smirked beside her, casually checking his Rolex as though he had more important places to be. They whispered to each other, occasionally glancing in my direction and suppressing laughter, making no attempt to hide their mockery of my appearance or situation. Judge Simmons entered the courtroom promptly at 9, a slender woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her reputation for no-nonsense efficiency was immediately apparent as she called the court to order and began reviewing the case file without preamble. "I have reviewed all submitted documentation," she began, her voice firm and measured. "This appears to be a relatively straightforward dissolution of marriage, with some disputed assets and allegations of financial impropriety. Let us proceed efficiently." Jessica's attorney spoke first, painting a picture of me as a workaholic contractor who had neglected my wife emotionally while benefiting from her social connections to build my business. She characterized Jessica as a supportive spouse who had finally reached her breaking point after years of emotional neglect, never once mentioning Trevor or the affair that had precipitated our separation. "Furthermore, Your Honor, my client has genuine concerns about Mr. Sullivan's business management and financial responsibility," Diane Winters asserted confidently. "We believe there may be undisclosed assets or earnings, given the cash nature of much of his business." I watched Jessica nod solemnly beside her attorney, the picture of victimhood in her cream dress and subtle makeup. Trevor sat directly behind her, a territorial hand resting on the back of her chair, his expression one of practiced sympathy. When my attorney presented our side, focusing on the timeline of Jessica's affair and the evidence of financial planning with Trevor well before our separation, I noticed Judge Simmons leaning forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as she looked over her reading glasses at Jessica. Mrs. Sullivan, the judge interrupted these financial transfers, began approximately 14 months before your separation. Can you explain the timing? Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat before regaining her composure. I was increasingly concerned about Elijah's temper and business decisions. I was setting aside personal safety funds based on financial advice I received independently. Independently, Judge Simmons asked, consulting a document. The financial advisor in question is listed as Bernard Phillips, correct? Yes, Your Honor, Jessica responded. And how did you select Mr. Phillips, specifically? Jessica hesitated, glancing briefly at Trevor. He was recommended by a friend. I see, the judge replied, making a note. And these text messages exchanged with Mr. Blackwood, who I understand is now your partner, beginning 18 months before your separation, discussing what appears to be the optimal timing for leaving your marriage. How would you characterize those? The courtroom grew noticeably tenser. Trevor leaned forward and whispered something urgently to Jessica's attorney, who quickly requested to approach the bench. After a brief hushed conversation that left Diane Winters looking frustrated, the proceedings continued. As my forensic accountant presented her findings showing the coordinated pattern of financial decisions made by Jessica under Trevor's guidance, I noticed Judge Simmons asking increasingly pointed questions. She seemed particularly interested in emails, where Trevor had explicitly mentioned protecting assets before filing and minimizing Sullivan's claims. Your Honor, my attorney said, presenting his final evidence, we have obtained text messages between Mrs. Sullivan and Mr. Blackwood from approximately 1 year before the separation, where they explicitly discuss, and I quote, how to clean Elijah out so he has nothing left to fight with when the time comes. Trevor's face darkened as this evidence was presented. He leaned forward again, this time passing a handwritten note to Jessica's attorney, who nodded slightly after reading it. Judge Simmons called an unexpected 30-minute recess, instructing both parties to remain in the building. During this break, I sat alone on a bench in the hallway while Jessica, Trevor, and their attorney huddled in intense conversation at the far end of the corridor. Occasionally, their voices would rise, with Trevor gesturing emphatically before they would notice others watching and lower their voices again. When we reconvened, Jessica and Trevor appeared surprisingly relaxed, even confident. They exchanged glances and subtle smiles as everyone took their places. Trevor leaned back in his seat, arm stretched casually across the back of the bench, looking like a man who had just been assured of victory. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, Judge Simmons began adjusting her glasses. I am prepared to rule on this dissolution of marriage. Jessica reached back to squeeze Trevor's hand, both of them barely containing their apparent triumph. I heard Trevor whisper, I told you we had nothing to worry about, followed by Jessica's soft laughter. Judge Simmons paused, her gaze fixing on their interaction. Before I proceed, I want to address the behavior I have witnessed in my courtroom today. Mr. Blackwood, this proceeding involves the dissolution of a marriage to which you are not a party. Your displays of inappropriate familiarity and evident amusement are not only disrespectful to this court, but to the serious nature of these proceedings. Trevor straightened in his seat, the smirk fading from his face. Furthermore, the judge continued, her voice taking on a steely quality, having thoroughly examined the evidence presented. I find this to be one of the most calculated cases of marital fraud I have encountered in my 15 years on the bench. Jessica's smile froze, then slowly dissolved as Judge Simmons continued. The documented evidence shows a clear pattern of conspiracy between Mrs. Sullivan and Mr. Blackwood to systematically divert marital assets and deliberately time this divorce to maximize financial advantage, all while engaging in an extramarital relationship that predates the separation by well over a year. The judge shuffled through several pages of notes before continuing, her voice measured but unmistakably stern. Therefore, I am denying Mrs. Sullivan's requests for division of Mr. Sullivan's business assets, as the evidence clearly demonstrates her intent to undermine rather than support that business in the months preceding separation. The family home, having been purchased primarily with proceeds from Mr. Sullivan's business prior to the documented beginning of financial impropriety, will remain with Mr. Sullivan. I heard Jessica's sharp intake of breath, but the judge was not finished. Additionally, Mrs. Sullivan is ordered to return all diverted funds, totaling $123,400 plus 5% interest within 30 days. Trevor's hand had disappeared from Jessica's shoulder. He was now sitting rigidly upright, his expression darkening with each of the judge's pronouncements. Finally, Judge Simmons said, removing her glasses entirely, "I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for review of potential charges of financial fraud and perjury based on Mrs. Sullivan's sworn financial declarations, which conflict substantially with the evidence presented today." The color drained from Jessica's face. "Your Honor, there must be some mistake," she began, her voice quavering. "There is no mistake, Mrs. Sullivan," the judge responded firmly. "This court has seen clear evidence of calculated financial deception conducted with the explicit purpose of defrauding your spouse of his rightful assets. Such behavior constitutes potential criminal activity beyond the scope of family court." Jessica turned desperately to Trevor, whose face had hardened into a mask of cold calculation. Instead of offering support, he was already edging away from her, physically creating distance between them on the bench. "This court is adjourned," Judge Simmons declared, bringing down her gavel with a sharp crack that seemed to punctuate the collapse of Jessica's carefully constructed plans. As everyone rose, I watched Jessica reach for Trevor's arm, only to have him deliberately step away, leaning to whisper something in her ear before walking briskly toward the exit without looking back. Whatever he said caused Jessica to sink back into her seat, tears finally breaking through her perfect makeup streaming down her face as the reality of her situation crashed down around her. The sound of her sobs followed me as I walked out of the courtroom, not with triumph, but with the strange, bittersweet feeling of justice finally being served. The weeks following the divorce ruling were a period of slow but steady rebuilding. I moved back into our now my house after living in a small apartment for months. The familiar rooms felt different, simultaneously comforting and haunted by memories I was working to process. My first project was repainting the bedroom, erasing the space where I had discovered Jessica's betrayal, and creating something new that belonged only to me. My phone rang constantly during those first days after the ruling. Jessica called from multiple numbers when I blocked her primary one, leaving tearful voicemails begging for my help with her legal troubles. Trevor predictably had completely abandoned her once she became a liability rather than an asset. According to mutual friends, he had already been seen around town with another woman barely 2 weeks after the courthouse scene. "Elijah, please," Jessica pleaded in one message. "They are talking about pressing charges. I could go to jail. I never meant for any of this to happen." Despite everything, I could not find satisfaction in her suffering. After consulting with my attorney, I agreed to a meeting where I informed her I would not actively pursue criminal charges if she complied fully with the judge's financial rulings and agreed to a complete separation with no further contact. The relief in her eyes was palpable, though tempered by the realization that my help came from compassion, not lingering affection. "I do not understand why you would help me after what I did," she said quietly as we concluded our meeting. "Because destroying you would not rebuild me," I replied simply. "And I am focused on rebuilding now." True to my word, I provided a statement to the district attorney, indicating my preference for full financial restitution rather than criminal prosecution. Jessica avoided jail time, but received probation and a permanent mark on her record that would follow her professional life for years to come. With the returned funds and freedom from Jessica's financial demands, I was able to revitalize my construction business. I rehired employees. I had been forced to lay off and reached out to former clients to rebuild relationships that had been damaged during the divorce proceedings. Slowly, contracts began returning, and my reputation for quality work overshadowed the rumors Trevor had spread. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected call from Judge Simmons' brother Michael, who needed extensive renovations on a historical property he had purchased. "Eleanor mentioned you might be available," he said. "She was impressed with how you conducted yourself during difficult proceedings." That contract led to others within their social circle, ironically giving me access to the wealthy clientele Jessica had always desired. Throughout this period of professional recovery, Maria Rodriguez remained a constant support. What began as friendly advice about legal proceedings evolved into coffee meetings to discuss business strategies, then dinner conversations that had nothing to do with work at all. Unlike my whirlwind romance with Jessica, my relationship with Maria developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's thoughts and dreams. You approach relationships differently now, Maria observed one evening as we walked along the riverfront. You pay attention to actions more than words. She was right. My experience with Jessica had fundamentally changed how I evaluated people, teaching me to recognize red flags I had previously ignored in my eagerness to believe what I wanted to be true. With Maria, I noticed how her actions consistently aligned with her words, how she valued meaningful conversation over material displays, and how she respected my work without seeing it as merely a means to financial gain. Mr. Rodriguez, who had supported me through the darkest period of the divorce, became like family. He invited me to Sunday dinners, taught me to make his famous paella, and shared wisdom from his 80 years of life experience. In my country, he told me once, we have a saying, "After the storm, the ground is more fertile. Your storm has passed, Elijah. Now see what you can grow." 1 year after the divorce ruling, I completed the renovations on my house, transforming it entirely from the place Jessica and I had shared into a home that reflected my own tastes and priorities. The process was therapeutic, allowing me to physically reshape my environment as I emotionally reshaped my life. When I hosted a housewarming gathering for friends, family, and colleagues who had stood by me, the contrast between this warm, genuine celebration and the performative social events Jessica had preferred was striking. Maria moved in 6 months later, bringing her warmth, her collection of well-loved books, and her straightforward approach to life that continuously reminded me what authentic partnership should feel like. We discussed marriage as a possibility for the future, but without rush or pressure, both appreciating the value of building something solid before formalizing it. Occasionally, I would hear updates about Jessica through mutual acquaintances. After her relationship with Trevor imploded, she struggled financially and professionally, the consequences of her choices following her despite attempts to reinvent herself in our community. There was a time when such news would have brought me satisfaction, but now it only prompted quiet reflection on how differently our paths had unfolded since that day in court. Looking back on the entire experience from the perspective of 2 years later, I can honestly say that while I would never choose to relive the pain, I am grateful for the growth it forced upon me. I learned that true justice is not about revenge, but about restoration. I lost who I thought was the love of my life, but found myself and built something more authentic than I had before. The betrayal and public humiliation at the hands of Jessica and Trevor taught me resilience I never knew I possessed. The unexpected kindness from people like Mr. Rodriguez and Judge Simmons restored my faith in humanity. And the slow, thoughtful building of a relationship with Maria showed me what genuine connection looks like when it is based on mutual respect rather than projection or convenience. Have you ever witnessed karma deliver the perfect response to someone who wronged you? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of justice gave you hope, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes life's most unfair moments can lead to unexpected blessings. Thanks for listening, and remember, your character in difficult times defines who you truly are.